We put a picture on Instagram of just a mirror selfie that happened to have a bottle of Pedialyte in it. And then somehow the Pedialyte people saw it. And then by the next venue we got to, there was like a whole case of Pedialyte and some great boxing that has lights when you open it up. All sorts of swag.
Pedialyte lights, like Pedialytes.
Yes, Pedialyte.
Yeah. That's kind of a tour staple, right? Pedialyte?
I feel like it's a life staple. I mean, we always have it in the fridge or on tour.
I don't think it's a thing that like most grown people drink on a day-to-day basis.
Then that means they're not drinking enough at night. Like, you drink Pedialyte in the morning when you're really hungover.
Even though Pedialyte kept mentioning this cannot cure hangover, but we suggest you keep your electrolytes up and stay hydrated. I think there must have been some point where they realized they couldn't market a drink that was both for babies with diarrhea and for adults
with diarrhea. Are you guys New York lifers at this point?
Yes.
Yeah.
I will say yes.
Kim will say yes. We've just took 1 foot out of the city because we got a place in California as well now, which is what I'm all about at the moment. But Kim never wants to leave New York.
I'm going to die in this house.
I know both of you went to Pratt, and Pratt's like it's like a stone's throw from here. You were in Williamsburg for a little while, but like you've been within probably a 20-block radius for what, 10, 15 years at this point?
Yeah. It's funny because I actually just this year went to a friend's apartment in Manhattan. And as I was walking there, I realized this is the first friend that I've had that lives in Manhattan that I'm going to their house. And it just kind of blew my mind that everyone we hang out with is in Brooklyn.
I mean, out of the how many million? At least 3 million people live in Manhattan. We don't know one of them? What?
Or at least it's just the only one who invited me over. I don't know what that says about me.
All the other fancy folks are just trying to keep you at arm's length.
You both ended up here as art students, I assume, if you're going to Pratt. Was
Yeah.
that the career path at that point?
Yes, I thought I was going to be an illustrator, and I graduated. I did one job for the New York Times, and I decided I did not want to be an illustrator.
You sort of went out on top. You kind of hit the peak of illustration.
It was very
People
stressful.
spend their entire careers trying to get there, and you got there, and then you quit?
Well, I won't say it's the top. It was the op-ed page. I feel like that's not like the top, but it was
like in the solar system of the top.
I was very excited about it. And I wish I figured it out sooner that I didn't want to do illustration, after graduating. Maybe if I figured it out mid-time at Pratt. But I mean, hey, I design our album covers and merch, and I still kind of illustrate.
Well, it was the deadline and the feedback and that stressed you out. I mean, you're a writer.
I am.
So how do you
feel
about?
I'm a blogger. So
yeah, so it's quick.
Life is a constant deadline.
Yeah, the deadline's always looming because you always need something new going up.
And I've been writing professionally for probably 12 or 13 years at this point, and have mostly worked for publications, but I've been laid off twice during that time, so I was forcibly made to be a freelancer, and that was just miserable with regards to hunting down jobs, then doing them, and then trying to get the payment. I mean, the actual work as a freelancer is about half of what you're actually doing.
You can't plan anything, because if a job comes in, whatever you had planned is out the window. You're like, I have to do this because I don't know when the next job's coming in. It's stressful.
But I remember that even starting out with the band is that you always wanted to take everything that came your way.
Yeah.
Because you never knew when something else would come your way. And if you're lucky and people are excited about what you do, it basically means you never stop working.
What was the worst thing that you took in the early days with regards to music?
It was the worst thing we did, but I don't think it was because of us taking it. We played a Valentine's Day show really early on at a warehouse in Williamsburg, and I think we were just way off, and there weren't a lot of people there. And I remember that started we will never play on Valentine's Day again. It
started that. We had a number of Valentine's Day shows that were just awful. Because we're a couple, people would think of us to play their Valentine's Day event, and then we had to literally be like, we go dark on Valentine's Day. We disappear on Valentine's Day.
There are certain obligations attached to that. This is something that I've run into in my personal dating life, of when you just start dating someone and it's right around Valentine's Day. there's a lot of pressure to have a really awesome Valentine's Day.
See, I think Matt lucked out because I've never grasped onto that. My tradition is you got to hit the pharmacies the day after Valentine's Day to get that 75% off candy.
I didn't know where you were going with that.
You're thinking the day after pill, maybe? No, I was the one who, I tweeted this year, is Valentine's Day still a thing? To which I got numerous responses, which you clearly have been in a relationship for a long time. Because, yes, early on, people seem to care. But you get in pretty deep over a decade.
But I was never one to, like, find that special. Or I remember once we were doing an interview and someone was talking about anniversaries. And they're like, do you celebrate your anniversary? And I was like, no. Like, didn't even think of that. And because they were like, oh, what did you get each other for your anniversary? And I was like, you can get gifts. So then we started being like, oh, we should just buy something we want. And I remember that year we bought like a big flat screen TV, and that was like a big deal. And we were like, it's because of it's our anniversary.
It was back when you would call it a flat screen TV and not just a TV.
Yeah.
Because you can't get a non. But yeah, we didn't really know when we got together. It was a rough fall time. Wait, you said you were in a relationship or you are now, or?
I'm not right now.
Okay, because my question was, when do you judge when a relationship, like an anniversary, if it's not a wedding related thing, which is a clear date, but when people,
when you did it,
Kim's
the bangiversary
could be when you did it. It could be like, if it was a formal date.
Yeah.
At some point, like if you, went out to dinner or drinks or whatever the kids are doing these days.
We have this date that it's from a movie stub ticket that I was like, I guess around this point we were dating.
Yeah.
And so that's like what we use as the.
When does the band come into the picture?
Not till 2 years later, right?
Yeah, 2 years. I honestly thought it was 3 years for the last, like, probably 12 years until right now. You're right. It was 2 years we dated before we played any music.
As far as like trial by fires go for being in a relationship, being in a van and touring around with someone, I mean, this is why so many bands break up, right? I mean, it puts you see people at their absolute worst. I mean, I've always said, like, if you want to really put a relationship through its paces, move in with somebody. You see people at their absolute worst, and I think that's got to be amplified when you're in a band with someone.
Well, let me tell you, we moved in together 2 months after dating.
Okay, so
it was quick, but rents are expensive in New York. It's kind of like you have to do that if you're cheap.
But you're right about the things being amplified.
Yeah.
It's like when you're in college and you have this one really fun friend and you say, what would be awesome? Like, if we lived with that guy, like, life would be so fun every day until you realize.
I lived with that guy.
Yeah, until, like, he ruined your, like, chill part of your life. Yes, being in a van or then a tour bus, if you have, it is amplifying everything times 10.
Yeah.
But with us, we were just two people who got along very well.
And even we worked really well together. Like, we did art projects together and band posters for other bands and Matt's homework.
Did a lot of my homework.
And so we worked really well together. And I think that was the important part, because I had never played drums before. And it kind of started because I was like, I went to a show and I was watching the drummer and I was like, that looks like fun. I want to do that. Got a hand-me-down set from a friend, and Matt had a keyboard that he wanted to figure out. So we just started together.
Wait, so Matt, you were also kind of learning as you were going?
Yeah, I played guitar and bass in like punk and hardcore bands when I was a teenager, but I never sang in a band. I screamed in a band in a couple different bands, and I never played keyboard or piano. I'm still pretty bad at it, but I do my best.
When did it actually start to become serious? Not the relationship, but it sounds like that was immediate, the being in a band thing.
For us, it feels like it took a really long time. Like, we were touring in Europe, and we still kept being like, but we're not a real band. Like, when you go through immigration and you have to write your occupation, it felt so weird to write musician.
Even though we didn't have other jobs, but I was like, really? A musician? That's not like a real occupation someone can have. Because even growing up, being into punk rock and stuff, a lot of my favorite bands never made a living off playing music. So I never assumed it as a possibility. It was always just an expensive hobby, paying for a practice space in New York City. And how long after we started the band was like, did we not have other jobs?
I think maybe it was a year. I'm not sure. I mean, for us, it was easy to quit our jobs because at the time,
Matt made it sound like there weren't really jobs to quit.
I was a nanny at the time, and Matt was working freelance as doing After Effects for a TV show. You know, we shared a bedroom in an apartment with 2 other people. We shared a cell phone.
We had a twin bed, like a bed made for one person. Why is it called a twin bed? Do we know this? A bed for
I don't
one
know the
person.
etymology of beds, Matt.
I wish I did. I mean,
no.
We both wear glasses. We look like people who know things.
I understand why you asked me.
Yeah,
but no, I don't know.
I just right before this.
That's a really good question.
Going on
Somebody
Twitter,
write in. Yeah.
I had to go ask. Okay, if I have a song that is 80 beats per minute and I want to slow it down to 75 beats per minute, what percentage less is that?
You asked Twitter?
I asked Twitter, and I got a lot of responses,
did.
many of them different. But
It's
what
like
I
a law
realized,
of averages, right? It's like crowdsourcing, right? The one
Yes.
that the most people answer is probably
the
correct.
difference was in the 6.66666, the devil's number.
Okay.
I remember, like, in math class thinking, this is not important stuff. But I wish I knew the equation that gets me to that, because I kind of need to know that information often.
Did you see my response?
No.
It said, "Speed it up, you fucking pussy." No, I didn't.
That's what she says about everything.
I actually want to get back to the TV thing. I think it's interesting because when I first moved out here, I had 3 internships. I moved out here after college, unpaid internships, and was, probably lived in like 6 or 7 places in the first 2 years. So part of that is really being as mobile and lightweight as possible. Like the actual ability to move from apartment to apartment on the subway. And once you start buying stuff like a flat screen TV, right, you're kind of planting your flag.
I looked at it that way. I like that.
As you get more and more belongings, you buy a couch, you're a little more sedentary.
We lived on Grand Street in Williamsburg for a long time in a little railroad apartment that was 8 feet wide. It was basically living in a hallway. We gave the address of this place out a couple times, and because it's been referred to across a number of our albums, and we had an album called Grand based on the building's still there. It's still as fucked up as it ever was. Like, there's these really nice buildings built all around it, but it still is like, looks like a disaster. We lived there in 400 square feet for close to 10 years, and you can only get so much stuff. It's fishbowl effect.
Yeah.
And then we're sitting in our house now, and each one of the floors of this house is bigger than the entire apartment, and there's 4 floors
We
here.
had like a piece of furniture for every floor when we moved in. We're like, so I guess we gotta buy some stuff.
It's a nice feeling, though, right?
Is it though? Because I'm cheap. Man, now we gotta buy a lot of stuff.
This is a nice big building with multiple. You must feel like you achieved something at that point that you were able to move in here.
Definitely. I'd never lived in a house. I've always grown up in apartments, and like the thought of a house was like, no, it's not gonna happen for you. Like, move along. So the fact that we were able to do this by doing something that we absolutely love and that we would do for free, like, but people will pay us.
Don't tell
say that into
anybody.
the microphone, Kim.
But like, we love doing it. It's so crazy. I keep thinking it's all gonna come crashing down. I'm like, when is someone gonna catch on? Or I don't know.
You feel like you're still fooling people.
Yeah. Oh, not like fooling people, but I'm just like, how is this my job?
Yeah. Granted, we bought in a neighborhood that was notoriously dangerous for many years, and we bought at the bottom of the housing crisis. But I do remember...
You actually can hear a siren in the background.
Yeah.
Turn the volume
Yeah.
up.
But I do remember when we were still in Grand Street apartment, and we had been working so hard, and we just felt like for so long, and we're like, nothing's changed in our lives. We're still battling rats, cockroaches, rat mites, which are like the scabies that live on rats, but if the rats die, then they come and eat you. These things happen to us. And then we got this place, and then, like many places, it was a money pit, and there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And then I was like, we made the biggest mistake of our life, because we're a band, which isn't the most consistent job, I think, and we had paid too much, whatever. I don't know. And
Where are you going with this?
all I'm saying is that finally, in 2018, I feel okay with this whole situation.
Matt regrets every single purchase. He buys a pair of socks. He's like, I don't know if these are the right socks. Should I return them? I think I might return them.
Sounds like me.
I do this sometimes too, Matt. I was telling you before that 10 years ago I lived, a stop away from here, and I went and visited it. I don't know, like every once in a while I'll get a little bit like a pang of, I don't know if nostalgia is the right word, but of just like of that time, when I was like in my early 20s and when I was sort of living in a small apartment and scrambling to get by. I mean, there is like a certain level of romanticism to that we kind of have bred into us through, like through music and the books we read. There seems to be maybe a little bit of degree of that on the new record.
Definitely. I mean, I feel like, well, one, I know it sounds weird, but I love when anything has a struggle that goes with it. And like, I feel like I enjoy the things we accomplish when they're really hard to accomplish.
Yeah.
Which maybe not in the middle of it when I'm like breaking down crying, but when all is said and done, you're like, we busted through that and like we came out on the other side. Last year, I tore my ACL on stage and we had to take the whole year off and I had to have surgery and then go through rehab to be able to play again. And I'll say in the middle of it, there were a lot of tears shed, but I now feel like, man, like that was something that wasn't easy in our lives and we made it through it. And he was a champion throughout the whole thing, taking care of me. And I don't regret having to go through that, which is weird.
You don't? Well, not to give more compliments, but Kim was so tough about the whole damn
I'm
thing.
gonna make you guys say a bad thing about each other before this is all over.
It worked so hard, but I do think within that we had like this different perspective that we haven't had for the past 5 albums. This was album number 6.
From the standpoint of things were going along pretty smoothly up till then?
Things were great.
Yeah.
I'm shocked how great things were going.
But things are only as great as they are relatively to other things.
I remember when your first record came out, whatever music magazine I was writing for at the time, and it came out on a small label. You guys were kind of everywhere all of a sudden. I mean, once that album came out, things kind of took off.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know if maybe it doesn't always feel that way from the inside.
Yeah, and I mean, I love the perspective, and I think from and
your life seems easy, Matt. It's my point.
but being that you were within the music world and so our first album, which was just self-titled, which is now it's presently not really on the internet.
Sure.
Someday it will come back, but there's some stuff.
What was the name of the label? It was Comics or something.
I Heart Comics was so there's some behind the scenes stuff of why we don't have it online presently, but there was a sort of arc to that was the MySpace generation. We had a little song called Yeah that got some love. It got some feature on the old MySpace. And that's when we changed from playing in people's living rooms to starting to play in small venues. But it wasn't until the next album, Grand, which with the Daylight song and stuff came out, that really it was like a shift.
But it was weird because I guess maybe because we were in the middle of it, it never felt like a jump. It just felt like a gradual uphill. So which I think is amazing. And that's how I want to continue if we're lucky enough, is just a constant slow upgrade instead of a jump up.
Well, it's just so hard to maintain the jump. This slow slope, like a song like Daylight, while, I look on Spotify and it's 80 million plays, but it seems to be listened to as much now as it was then. It wasn't like something that it never played on the radio when it first came out or anything. I think it probably plays on the radio more now, but it's nice for not having some big jump and then fall down.
You can drive yourself crazy, though, trying to figure out what it was about that song. I recently, for the show, I spoke to the gentleman who is the lead singer of Space Hog, and we had to talk about the song. And, he told me in his judgment, there's nothing really different about it. It was the right song at the right time. But if you try to get back to that, you'll make yourself crazy.
Absolutely. And I remember hearing an interview with the dudes from Gnarls Barkley, Danger Mouse and CeeLo, and they were just like, we're not going to make another Crazy.
Yeah.
It was the right song, a great song, but right song at the right time. And everything that just made it take off. And we realized,
do you feel that way about Daylight specifically? Yeah.
we don't chase it. I'm happy it happened. I remember seeing also an interview with Sir Mix-a-Lot about Baby's Got Back, and someone saying, you must hate that song, right? Everyone only wants that song. And he was like, hate that song? I love that song. That song put my kids through college. That song, whatever. Like you
walked up to this toy piano over here, and when you were playing it for me, like that was a riff that you played for me.
Oh yeah,
this is what bought us the house.
Yeah. So no, I'm so thankful that I don't think if that song came out now, it would have the same reaction. It was recorded in my childhood bedroom at my parents' house in Vermont. Sonically, it doesn't sound like, it's not hi-fi. It's very lo-fi. But it was just, I don't know, it all lined up. On the other hand, we have chased singles. Not to say that we think we would hit that level again, but we've chased singles. And I think a beauty of this album we just made is that we didn't really care about singles. We really just wanted to make an album that felt complete from the beginning to end, which is so backwards because everyone says, album's dead, man. Like, it's all about singles. It's all about, songs on shuffle. But I was like, I don't know. I want to make some short songs, some instrumental songs, some a cappella songs. Like, let's just make an album. And I'm so proud of it. And the response from the fans has been so great.
I want to get back to this idea of chasing singles, just as far as investing all you have into one specific song and trying to make that a definitive document, like a standalone in a way, something that can exist in and of itself in the world, perhaps in a car commercial.
Yes. Yeah. We had a point where we had a few different car commercials running at the same time. And again, I never bite the hand that feeds me. I'm so excited about people who are interested in using our songs, and a lot of the spreading of our music has been places have taken a chance, movies, TV shows, commercials. Yeah, to do individual songs that someone says, I think other people will like this. If you say that, you're going the wrong direction. Do you like it? Do you love it? Do you need to make it? That makes the difference.
Kim, where were you at in the rehab process when you guys actually started making music again in earnest?
I feel like it was maybe 2 months after surgery when it really started to come around. We thought, like, okay, surgery happens, a week later we start writing. That was not the case. That was Matt still helping me out of bed, like supporting my leg and like getting me to the bathroom because I had to pee really bad. Yeah. I got off the painkillers really quickly because they were making me have panic attacks. So he would like wake up in the middle of the night to me slapping him, saying like, open every window and door in the house. I can't breathe. Like,
as it's cold AF.
And then I got super depressed. So we kind of like had to focus on just me, getting me back to normal before we started writing.
Do you have an idea how long it was? I can't really remember.
I think it was like 2 months. But again, all that whole time is kind of a blur.
Do you feel like you're prone to that depression? From the outside, from somebody who like, has listened to your music for a long time, it's largely very happy, positive music, and you seem like largely very happy, positive people. Is that the first time something like that really hit you?
Yeah, I am usually really happy. And that was my first time kind of dealing with some heavy depression. And I couldn't understand what was happening at first. Like the other thing I was like, I make art now. And I was like, oh, while I'm stuck in bed, I'll like do stuff. I didn't do anything. I just
do you know what anhedonia is? You know that term? It's just part of depression when it starts getting really deep in, where you're unable to derive enjoyment from either creating or consuming art.
Ah,
is that what it was? I mean, it just wasn't
definitely,
because you sort of get in this like existential tailspin, right? Of like, what's the point of all of this? And
and just like there was no desire. I don't know. It was a whole new experience for me.
Yeah.
Which I'm happy I went through, just because I can now relate to people who are going through it and like fully understand, where before if I was PMSing, I was a little bummed out, but I'm like, I'd go for a run and then I'd be fine after the run. So this, I got super bummed out, which wasn't fun.
But again, it inspired different angles of music, and there's a song called Happy If You're Happy, which was, again, never meant to be a single. It's 1 minute and 45 seconds, but we noticed it creeping up our Spotify top 10 till it was at number 2. Maybe it's like in number 3 right now. But
you're really watching those charts, aren't you, Matt?
Oh yeah. But here's the thing: is like I'm just so interested in what people like. That's the thing that really, because you just don't know when you're working on something. The thing was that song was written was just saying I can't be happy unless you're happy, and it's something I was not fully aware of because you're always so chill.
But I don't know. And then again, in my looking back at the injury, that song wouldn't have come about if I was just my happy self.
I wish the listeners could see Kim's little happy self dance.
We'll make a gif of that for the show. The difference between, you said like PMSing before, even like having a bad day or anything else, is the knowledge that you're going to come out of this.
Yeah.
When you're really sort of dealing with something like that really hard for the first time in your life, you don't really know if or when it's actually going to end.
No, that's so true. And it's funny because it took me a while to understand PMS. Like now on tour, if I'm PMSing, I'll put a note on the bus door that tells all our dudes, you might want to avoid me this week because I could probably be irrational and snap about some stuff, but I'm just PMSing. And it's funny because things will happen and I'll be like, why did I just get so frustrated? I'm like, oh, I'm PMSing. And you can kind of put yourself in check and be like, stop overreacting about this. And with getting depressed, no, I couldn't. I was like, this is our life now. And it was also interesting when we came back to the East Coast and I went home to see family. I went to visit my aunt, and when I left, she sent me an email and she was like, I don't know how to say this, but it's like you've lost your spark. And that was the moment that I was like, oh, yeah, this isn't me. This isn't how I normally am, which was helpful because it made me focus on it and just kind of think all right, I'm going to get through this. Was
there an emotional or a personality shift when you guys really put yourselves back into music?
I got happy.
It was like turning on a light.
No, it's all blurry. But I think that was just maybe it was part of the recovery process. Yeah. It's funny because since the beginning of music, it's been used as some form of therapy, as the blues, and I mean that's not even the beginning, but you go way back, and it's just so much hurt that people are getting out. We just never used it for that.
The blues is a really good example. I had a woman on my show from Mali recently, and she was discussing, I mean, she deals with some really rough subject matter, like female circumcision, things of that nature. And she said that she was really leaning heavily on American blues music because that's a really good example of something. It's not just about dealing with heavy subject matter and being cathartic from that standpoint, but there's something really special about music in that it's one of the few mediums that really you can do something like that, where you can deal with something really heavy and still make it happy or energetic at the same time.
That's true. And that's been a thing we've done for years, even, which is take upbeat music and maybe have a little bit darker lyric. I think back to a song like Lessons Learned, where it's thinking about tomorrow won't change how I feel today, but da 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 na 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 na. Our whole thing was always, we thought if we make upbeat music and we write upbeat lyrics, it's just gonna be like swing sets and lollipops. It's gonna be too just grow. It needs to have something to ground it, something to make it feel more real. And I think when we've gone with the upbeat music and the upbeat lyrics, it just feels doesn't have a base to it.
One thing that's always struck me about your songs from a lyrical standpoint is I think I suspect a lot of them almost start as a mantra, as somebody who's has flirted and been really terrible with meditation, this idea of kind of having a mantra, right? Something you repeat over and over again. A lot of them really seem to have this kernel, this sort of one idea that forms the basis of the song. That there's a lot of gang vocals on this record, right? There's a lot of chanting. There's a song, I don't know the name of the song off the top of my head, but there's this idea of I would rather be above the grass than below it, basically. And it seems like something that really sort of started as a mantra, and the song was built around it.
That's I mean, you really nailed it on that. I'd rather be standing on the grass than lying under it, which it was that lyric, and then we wrote the song around it. My most recent mantra, should we make this a song? I've been telling Kim that I can't stop hitting the snooze button, and I wake up and I sing, I'm a lazy piece of garbage, short and stout. And I just sing that over and over to me until I get out of bed. I don't have more than that, but I'm a lazy piece of garbage, short and stout. But yeah, it's funny you point out that one. I mean, it doesn't always happen that way. but that song happened that way.
But I think that's from that year of being like, okay, everything sucks. I'm never going to get out of this. And then slightly seeing like a light at the end and being like, okay, we're getting closer. Like this could be okay.
The thing that really strikes me about that song is, it's a positive sentiment, obviously, but you very much have to acknowledge death in order to come to that positivity, right? That's basically half of the equation of that mantra.
Yeah, I was surprised at how much mortality came up across this album. We didn't even realize we were covering it that much until we were looking at all the songs and what all the lyrics were. We're like, damn, we was thinking about death a lot.
But I don't know. I think that's what happens when things aren't going great with someone. You do start to think about things like death.
And maybe it's not even death. It's about an end.
Yeah.
It's about the end of an era. Maybe it's not death like life or death, but like, what if we didn't get to do this band anymore? Which is what I've known my entire adult life. And that year we didn't. And it was the first year ever like that. And I just wasn't ready for that.
There's a positive element to thinking about that in that, hopefully if things work out, you're not taking them for granted. But is that something that you guys are, very sort of hyper conscious about when each album comes out, that, maybe there might not be another one, that this opportunity might not come around again?
Dude, each album, I do it every show. I'm like, we might never play this town again. I need to make this the best show this town has ever seen. Like, I do that every single day.
It's weird. I don't know how many years it's going to take us to accept that we get to do this. But between every album, we're like, I hope people listen again. But on the other hand, I think it's really great not to have too much expectation. I think that was something that always worked out well for our band, which, like, as we started this off saying, never thought we'd make a living doing this. So there's some people that are like, we're going to be the best band ever. Everyone's going to love it. We're going to win Grammys. We're going to whatever. Chances are you're setting yourself up for a career of disappointment with that mindset. But everything was just icing on the cake.
As I was coming in, I saw the two Moon Men on the mantle out there. You're okay if that's sort of the peak of success?
Yeah, I mean, we got two Moon Men. That's crazy. Never would have thought that happened. Yeah. Actually, when we were up for the award, they were like, we had a tour planned. And they're like, do you want to come to the ceremony? And we're like, oh, we have a tour. Like, I don't want to cancel this show.
Yeah. Like, you assume that you guys weren't going to win.
Obviously, we're not going to win.
I remember getting the call as Matt was backstage blowing up balloons.
At the time, we used to, blow up 50 balloons ourselves and fill garbage bags with them to throw out into the audience.
And so I, heard the news, ran backstage, told him. And I don't know, it was one of those things where we were like, whoa, that's so awesome. Matt's like, okay, I gotta go back to blowing up these balloons though, because we're gonna go on stage soon.
So cool. And
life. If it's not this idea of getting bigger and better with each subsequent album, what do you feel drives you as a band?
I mean, I guess we love doing this and we get to make music that we want to hear. I mean, my whole thing, we don't have any expectations, and I don't expect, not everyone's gonna love our music. That's the great thing about music. There's so many different genres, so many different types of music. But if I had one thing, I would like everyone just to give it a chance, and that would make me happy.
But the other thing about our path is, granted, the music sort of we've had peaks and valleys and then ups and downs. But the thing is, our live show has the people who come has just grown steady for the course of all of these years. It's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And I feel I love what Flaming Lips has gotten to do. Their biggest single, well, other than the one they had in the 90s that was on the radio, which was probably their
Jelly
biggest
song,
single.
Yeah.
But after that was, Do You Realize? But that was even 15, 16, 18 years ago. I don't know. It was a long time ago.
And it was big by our standards.
Yeah. But they've still, they still headline festivals, and they still have this great live show that people love. And something that came to my attention is that music as a recorded format, what would we say it's been around? 150 years?
Sure. However old Edison
Other than
is,
that, music's been around probably since people could tap on a rock or hum a melody. Music's always existed as a live format. And for us, I think that's probably the way we're best consumed. People really, the way they connect to our live show means so much to me, and the way it's grown over all the years. So as long as we get to keep doing that, and the growth in that is very satisfying to me.
And I will say, I mean, out of recording or playing live shows, I like to play live better. It's more exciting to me. That's what I hope for too. We can just keep playing live until we can't play live no more because we're dead.
So back to death.
But this is something you guys think you would like to just keep doing.
Yeah,
as long as you're standing.
If we stayed like, in that sense, if this is, the size venues we do, if that's what it was, I'm fine with that. There's no like, oh, if we could just play in an arena or a shed, like.
But I do think sheds being what you should call the outdoor amphitheaters and stuff. But I do think that it is tough for bands to start playing smaller venues than they once did. I think that would be really tough. We've been at a lucky point that it's either grown or maintained or whatever, that we haven't like had to scale back down. And I do see that happen with bands that even when they're really freaking successful, but they're a little bit less successful than they once were, as far as the live space goes, sometimes it just starts causing fights. They start firing people, trying to figure out what the thing is. But it's the way music works, and not everyone can be the Rolling Stones. Pretty much only the Rolling Stones can be the Rolling Stones, I think.
It's as enjoyable of an endeavor as it's always been?
Oh, definitely. Maybe a little more sometimes, because luckily we're at a point where we work with an awesome group of people, and I don't have to carry my drums in anymore. That's kind of nice.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like even when we think back, because we've sort of been spanning that time back to the Grand album and everything like that. That might have been the hypiest time, but we were still playing in small rooms, hoping people would come to the shows, and we were still driving around in a van, and my back, I have a bad back, killing me from bringing amps in and stuff like that. It's weird how the grass is always greener. I did wish someone told me being a new buzzy band only happens once. Enjoy it. Like, I want to say that to other young bands because, like, yes, things can get better, but it's fun to have that new buzzy moment. But it can't happen more than once.
I was talking to a friend who had foot surgery on both of her feet, and it's that whole thing of really taking for granted the fact that you can walk. All of these things that we take for granted in life until something comes along and robs us of them. The fact that you had a really shitty year, has it sort of heightened your appreciation for all that you do?
Definitely. I mean, just to the fact that as before this all started, we were debating if my lazy ass was going to wake up and work out in the morning. Of course it is, because I can wake up and go work out in the morning. Even walking down our stairs, like things that I'm not just struggling, the easy things I'm not struggling with is very nice.
But also as far as doing the music, I remember we'd go to a show at a bar to, just a handful of people in the audience. Kim's like, I want to play so bad. So just seeing, like, being able to get something taken away from you, but then able to get it back.
Yeah. That was the worst, is like when we were finally going out at night and going to see friends' bands play and just being like, I just want to be up there. That's all I want to do.
So just think when it's all said and done. Yeah.
It's going to be awful. I got real sad, guys.
Well, I had this one moment when we had just taken a little bit of a break before, what was it? What year did we play Coachella last? 2016, right? So we took a break that winter, and then we were doing some interviews beforehand, and they were doing this whole lean on like 360 VR stuff, and they gave me we were doing an interview, and they put on the VR headset and just had me on A$AP Rocky's stage. And I had this moment then, like I was 70 years old, and been like, man, remember when I got to do this? This is so cool. And I'm like, wait, I still get to do this. So dope.
Thanks so much to Matt and Kim for taking the time to do that and hosting me in their absolutely beautiful Brooklyn apartment. Thanks to Sheila, Dickie, and Kevin for helping set that up. You can check out Matt and Kim's new record, Almost Every Day. It's out now. Highly recommended. Thanks so much to everyone. Thanks to you guys as always for listening to the show. If you like the show, there are a number of ways to support us. You can rate and review us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Like us on Facebook. If you've got any feedback, it's rlcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Tumblr. That's rlcast.tumblr.com. And stick around because we will be back just about this time next week with another episode of RIYL.